Hello. I just wanted to share how I became an Israelite. It's not a religion whatsoever, it's people, it's God's chosen people. Israelite has been mentioned throughout the Old and New Testament as God's chosen people and as God's children. The way I came across this truth was because my father had came across this pastor, who is now our pastor, who actually taught the truth. We taught that we are Israelites if we obey Yahweh's ways. So when we first came across this pastor, we were actually in the Christian church, in the Christian religious movement. And we were in that bondage. I was in that bondage for about 16 years, basically since I was born. I was born into Christianity. And my father, he was born into Catholicism and then went into Christianity. And my mother, Pentecostal, and then became a Christian. So we've all been, in the different sects of Christianity. So when I came across the truth, I was a bit like, oh, well, why haven't I heard of this before? And it's because they simply don't teach the truth in the Christian churches. And the truth that we learned were things such as keeping the Sabbath, celebrating the holy days instead of the holidays, the holy feast days instead of the holidays, as well as the different idolizations that are in the Christian movement, and the different things that we were never told about in the Christian movement. So the very first thing was, we learned about the Sabbath. Alright, so we knew about the 10 Commandments. We knew that we had to obey our parents. We had to not kill, not steal, the basics. But we never kept the Sabbath. In fact, we would go to church on Sundays, but we wouldn't keep the Sabbath day holy. And that's not the same thing. A lot of people confuse going to church as keeping the Sabbath, when in Sabbath in Exodus 20 it clearly says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, because God worked 6 days and on the 7th day rested, and the 7th day he sanctified and made holy. Okay, so God made the 7th day holy. He made the 7th day the Sabbath day. So you, as a human, as a person, do not have the right or the power or the authority to make the Sabbath day first day, second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day. We just don't have that type of power to say we can move that day to any day of the week. Would be to try to play God, to basically mock him. That's just not right. So when we found out about it, we were like, okay, well, we have to keep the Sabbath. And that was around November, December. It was around October and November when we found out about the Sabbath, and November when we really started keeping it. So we started off, just not working that day. We would just have family time, and then later on we found the importance of keeping the Sabbath, a day that we give up to the Lord because He made it holy, and He told us to rest on that day. And it's important for us to keep His commandments if we love Him. Jesus even said, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. So it's done out of love. And the next thing we found out were about the holidays. And we just, what we came across that Christmas and Easter and Thanksgiving and Valentine's and Halloween and birthdays, all these things were pagan traditions of men. And Jesus said, you worship me in vain by keeping the commandments of men. He said to not keep the traditions of men, but instead to keep the commandments of Yahweh, of God. So when we found out these were pagans, if you look at the background of these holidays, you'll see that it started with witchcraft. It started because Constantine wanted to please the pagans of the Roman Empire, And so he tried to make Christianity fit in with these pagan practices so there wouldn't be war inside the empire. So actually the 25th, or Christmas, was actually originally the birthdays of pagan gods such as Tammuz and Nimrod, and of the Egyptian god and Horus and all these different pagan deities. And then he just made it Christmas. He made it a Christian holiday so that the Christians and the pagans can get along in the kingdom. But in the Bible, it never says anything about celebrating Christmas or Easter, for God's children to celebrate Easter. So again, okay, yeah, I understand. We were at first, we were like, oh yeah, but shouldn't we celebrate the birthday of Jesus? Okay, but again, we do not have the power, the authority, or the right to make a day holy. Only Yahweh does. The God does. So when you look at the word, it says, if it says nowhere in the Bible to keep that day holy, then we shouldn't keep that day holy. It was man that made that day holy. And do we follow man or God? We follow Yahweh, not man. So we stopped celebrating those holidays also. And on December is actually when we found out about these pagan holidays, and that's when we stopped celebrating them. And we found out about the feast days soon after. So we were like, okay, so what are we supposed to do to honor Yahweh instead? And we found out about the feast days, and we found out about the Feast of Tabernacles, and we found Feast of First Fruits, Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Alright? And again, Easter, that has a lot of pagan roots as well. The sacrificing of women, virgin women, would sleep with the temple priest on the altar. They would do sexual acts, and then the babies that these women would have, once they were about 3 months, they would be sacrificed into their gods, and the blood of the babies they would use to paint chicken eggs. Okay? And there you go, that's where the painting of the Easter eggs come from. And then also the Easter goddess of fertility, she was actually worshipped. She's called the God of Heaven. She was worshipped on the day of Easter. And the reason why the day is called Easter, because this goddess has many names, such as Astaroth and Ishtar, and also now Easter. The English translation of that is Easter. And that's why this holiday is called Easter, because of its pagan roots and because of the true God you're worshiping. When you are taking part in that practice, if you want to take part of honoring Yahweh instead of celebrating these holidays, you should celebrate the feast days. And we came to that realization then, and we automatically, it took time. I shouldn't say automatically, it took time. But we let go the pagan holidays, we let go of the Sunday worship, we let go of these, of that Greco mindset, and we started following what the Word says for us to do, Also, we just found out the way we, as daughters of God, my mother and I, how we should be dressing, the way we should be presenting ourselves in a modest way, the way we should be acting as daughters of God, of Yahweh. So, I started wearing my head coverings and my skirts, and a lot of people say, well, doesn't that follow your religion? No. If you're doing it because of a rule book that a church has, then it can be religious. But when you're doing it to serve Yah, because in His Word it says to, then it becomes you're doing it out of obedience, and that pleases Yahweh. It does. Head coverings, 1 Corinthians 11. 1 Corinthians 11 specifically says that it is an honor if it's an honor if a woman wears a head covering during prayer or prophesying, and it's a dishonor if a man wears a covering. And then a lot of people say, well, that means, the woman's hair. Well, in that actual passage When it talks about a woman wearing a head covering when praying or prophesying, it's talking about a physical, a covering, a physical covering, as in verb, to cover. Okay, it was a verb. There's two different types of coverings. Coverings as a natural covering, as the hair, and there's a physical covering, or to cover as in the verb cover, which is the one spoken about in 1 Corinthians. So it means to actually, to cover, to put on a covering. And you can go in, you have to go to the Hebrew words, because with all these translations, there's a lot of misunderstandings, because there were a lot of different Hebrew meanings for these English words that we have today. So that's what it meant. And not only that, but it was a sign, it's a sign of authority unto the angels, that you have authority on your head, that you have the authority of Yahweh on your head. Okay, it's a sign unto the angels. That's why we should do it, because when we put a head covering on during praying and prophesying, we're showing that Yahweh, you are my authority, you are my cover. Okay. Also, my conviction is that it's also a form of modesty. Alright? Hair has a beauty. It even says that the hair is a woman's glory. Alright? So it has beauty. Trust me, when you see a woman with long, beautiful hair, that's like it's her feminine beauty, and it draws attention from both women and men. So modesty, when you're being modest, you keep to yourself. You don't draw attention to your apparel, to the way you look, and inappropriate attention. So I also do it, not only because it's an ordinance given unto us, but also I do it as a form of modesty. I started doing that, and also skirts. I personally don't find anything modest with jeans at all, and I like it. I actually do, and nobody told me to do this. Nobody. If somebody would have told me to do this, I think I would have become rebellious and not done it. My pastor didn't tell me to do it. My mother didn't tell me to do it. But I saw them. I saw the women of the church being good role models. I saw my mother being a good role model. And I went to the Word, of course, and I saw that it was in there to be modest. And I saw that it was in there to represent my Yahweh in a good way, in an appropriate way. And I let the Holy Spirit work through me, and the Holy Spirit convicted me into doing this. I never did it because somebody told me. I did it because I felt in my heart to do it. This is now February. Oh, sorry, it's April. It's April now, actually, and I came to the truth around November, and I've already learned so much. It's a bit overwhelming, but when you have the peace of Yahweh, it's just a joy to know this truth. The Sabbath day, the commandments, the holy days, the way I'm supposed to act and dress, and it's just beautiful. I want to also, in my next videos, I want to share different things that I've learned in this walk that I've been in for a few months now. And I'm very happy that God has shown me this truth, that He has spoken to me, and I'm glad to be His child, His chosen people. So I just wanted to share how I came into this truth, how I became an Israelite, and the experience in that.